Welcome to the Beyond Ordinary Woman podcast. Every 2 weeks, we'll post a podcast version of one of our free training videos, but you can access them now at beyondordinarywomen.org. This episode or series includes downloadable information on our website, beyondordinarywomen.org. Go to Resources on the main menu and click on Podcast/Video Extras. Enjoy the podcast.
I'm Kay Daigle of Beyond Ordinary Women Ministries. I'd like to welcome you to the second in a series on burnout. And I'm here with Dr. Michell Pokorny, who is sharing her expertise with us about this subject. And if you missed our first video, it's the burn and burnout, and I hope you'll go back and watch it so you can understand really what burnout is. And now we're going to talk about being on the brink of burnout, what the warning signs are. So, Michelle, just help us understand how we might recognize the fact that we're moving toward burnout.
Right, yes. I think that's very important because, as you mentioned earlier, you were burned out before you even knew that you were burned out.
That's right.
And so there's definitely some warning signs that can kind of be triggers that can give us just an indication that something's off.
And which is what I knew, but nobody around me seemed to have any idea what it was. So I was lost.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
Well, in the research that I did, I saw 3 patterns from pastors that kind of led them towards the burnout path. There was 3 areas of their lives that they neglected. They neglected their rest, they neglected their people, and they neglected their means of connecting with God. And so what I mean by those 3 things, when they neglected their rest, that doesn't just mean physical rest, which is a huge part of it. That's obviously very important as we're integrated beings. It's important that we take care of our physical bodies. But they also neglected things that were restful to them. So leisure activities, things that are good hobbies that are very life-giving and nourishing to them. These were definitely put aside for the demands of the ministry. And so that's a big area of neglect in their lives. The second thing, neglecting their people. They weren't neglecting the people they were ministering to. The people often neglected in burnout were their family members just right around them, as well as people that pour into them. And so the mentors, the really good friends that they can completely be themselves with and be honest about what's really going on in their lives. Their time available for these type of relationships diminished as they were going through and working so hard for the Lord. And then the last thing that they neglected was their means of connecting with God. And so often in the busyness of life and the demands of ministry, one of the first things to slide is our spiritual disciplines. And so they neglected receiving from the very source of life that can sustain them in ministry. And we get into a pattern then of doing things out of our own strength. And that's not a very healthy way to live.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and I can identify with certainly some of that myself. Sure. Because what I found was, and I ended up reading a book that somebody had suggested to me. In the book, the author talks about various transitions. I think the name of the book is Transitions. And he talks about how each of us can handle a different amount of weight. And what I began to realize as I really prayed and thought about that was that I had lost a lot of the people that helped hold me up to carry the same weight that I had been carrying. Because I used to have a number of women on staff with me, and they helped carry me, and I helped support them and encourage them, and they were people I could talk to. Right. And I really... they left and went other places, and I did not have that kind of support that I needed to talk to anyone. So I certainly understand that that is a really big part of it. And that was affecting my sleep and my rest. So you kind of put those things together that I talked about in the first video, and this is kind of, I think, how I ended up there. I just didn't know what it was, so that was hard. That was hard. So as you think about that, how does that manifest itself in someone's life? Is there a certain way they feel? Is there are there certain things that they do that show up, or what? How would you describe that?
So our bodies often are some of the first indicators when something is off. And so just a feeling of general fatigue could be an indicator that you might be on the path to burnout. Not getting enough rest at night. But even when you do sleep, not feeling fully rested when you wake up, often our brains are still trying to work out what's going on in the day. And so if we have a lot in our minds, then it's hard to have a really restful night's sleep. Another area is just emotional fatigue, just feeling like I don't have enough to give this person right now, and feeling like your own resources are drained in that aspect. Other manifestations, you mentioned how you felt like your support system, you didn't have that support system anymore. Often people that have so many demands on their lives end up feeling a little bit isolated and like they have no one to talk to and no one really to lean on. Nor do they feel like they have the capacity to even search that out and know where to start until they get to a real breaking point. So that's another way that this manifests itself. Lack of self-care. You know, it takes discipline to take care of ourselves. It takes discipline to eat right, to get enough sleep, to say no when we need to say no. And often, if we're in a period where we're going towards burnout, we can start to cope with things that aren't very healthy. And so in order to escape the fatigue that we're feeling, we might end up spending 10 hours watching TV or just scrolling on social media. And so doing these activities that are sort of a mental break, but they're truly not very restful. And so if you find yourself kind of self-medicating in a way that's an unhealthy way, that might be another indicator of burnout.
I wish I'd had you around when I was going through this. That would have been really, really nice.
Just some other manifestations, feeling too tired and busy for spiritual disciplines, working long hours but not feeling a sense of accomplishment, and then feeling as if you constantly need to you feel this pressure to succeed. That's another indicator.
Which I suppose was part of what we talked about in the last video that I had.
Right.
Well, thank you, Michelle. That was really very helpful. I know it can help a lot of people. And as we said in the last video, this could involve people not in full-time ministry too.
Absolutely.
And so these are things that all of us need to be aware of.
Sure.
Because it could happen just with our jobs. It could happen with a lot of family stuff going on. It can happen to anyone. So we hope you'll join us for our third video, which is going to be beating burnout. And Michelle is going to help us prevent ever getting to the point of burnout in that video.
Thanks for listening to the Beyond Ordinary Women podcast. You can find more podcasts and information about women in leadership by going to beyondordinarywomen.org. This podcast was produced by Beyond Ordinary Women Ministries. Our production team includes Evelyn Babcock, Kay Daigle, Kay Halligan, Deborah Herring, Sharifa Stevens, and John Sparks. Theme music, Back in Stride by Don Miller, used by courtesy of Christine Miller.